Good morning, Yohanan.
Hi, Dan.
Welcome back to another episode of the podcast, the Tsur Institute of Biblical Research's podcast.
Yeah.
Today, we are starting something a little different. We're going to start a series of motifs, themes, biblical themes, literary themes, and motifs. And what are we going to start off with, Yohanan? Where are we going to go?
Well, we're starting off with
What book are we going to go?
the book of Samuel.
The book of Samuel. Excellent.
And I would just add to what you said there, that I think the reason we thought of doing this was because motifs and looking at motifs through a book are an amazing way of finding the message of the book. So that's what we thought we were going to do.
So there must be several themes going throughout the book of Samuel. Which thread are we gonna start pulling on today?
Well, there's, like you said, there's several, but there's really a very interesting and important play in the book of Samuel on size. Mm-hmm. And that's connected with another motif, which is sight. Of course, those things go together. You look and you see a size of a... So let's just dive into it and see.
All right, let's dive in. We're going to start at the beginning of the book, are we not?
Yeah, right. Hannah's prayer. And I would add here that often at the seams of different places in the Bible, there are poems, which is very interesting. It happens also in the books of the Torah. But here, there's a poem towards the beginning of the book of Samuel, and then also a poem, a very important poem towards the end, which is in 2 Samuel. And by the way, like actually the two books we might see differently, but actually they are a book
One
together.
book, yeah.
So it's very interesting to see that the song of Hannah starts where she says, "My heart exults in the Lord, my horn is exalted."
So we're turning to Samuel, 1 Samuel chapter 2.
1 Samuel chapter 2. It's the song of Hannah.
Mm-hmm.
And here where she says, my horn is exalted, the word in Hebrew is Ramah, from Rom.
Brought up high.
Brought up high, yeah, right.
And the song also ends with a similar verb. He will give strength to his king. There was no king when she said that.
Right.
And exalt the horn of his anointed.
Exactly. And then you see in verse 7, it's kind of really giving us such an important point here. The Lord makes poor and rich. He brings low. He also exalts. And again, the word exalt is from that root rom.
Right.
He is the one who lifts up.
My New King James translates that one in verse 7 as he lifts up.
Yeah.
He brings people low and he lifts up.
Right.
And so he lifts up her horn. And he lifts up, and he will lift up the horn of his anointed, of the king.
Right. And there's actually another very interesting reference to now size here, but we'll come back to that in a second after we look at what we see in the song at the end of the books of Samuel, in the book of Samuel.
All right, so keep a finger in 1 Samuel chapter 2, and jump with us to 2 Samuel chapter 22. This brings us towards the close of the whole book of Samuel, the unified book. What verse are we looking at? Verses 28.
28, he says, "You save an afflicted people, but your eyes are on the haughty whom you abase." Mm-hmm. And again, haughty there is from the root rom, which means the lifted up, the ones who lift themselves up. In other words, the Lord is going to bring down those who see themselves as lifted up.
Right, and he helps you read the afflicted. The New King James reads the humble.
Right.
So those who are humble are helped, those who are proud are brought down. And again, we see it in verse 47 and 49, where it says, "The Lord lives, blessed be my rock, let God be exalted. And finally, in verse 49, he delivers me from my enemies. You also lift me up. Same verb in Hebrew. You lift me up above those who rise against me.
Well, this is beautiful because in verse 47, what you said, and the Lord and exalted is God. It's again from the root rom, and it's like he's the source. He's the one who in himself is lifted up, but he lifts up those who are low. And so we, at the end of the book of Samuel, in 2 Samuel, we see exactly the same motif as we see in the prayer of Hannah at the beginning of the book.
So this is good, and we see God exalted throughout many places of the Bible. But there's something about the size of people and how humans look to great figures with some hope of victory, which this book likes to point out. And let's get back to Hannah's song. And I want to point out another verse down there. If we look to verse 3. In English, it's almost a little lost, but let's work our way through it. She sings, "Talk no more very proudly," my New King James reads. And
Yeah.
it loses something. Do you have something different in yours?
Not really.
So very proudly is hiding an adjective that's just repeated twice in the Hebrew. Literally, she says, "Do not make many words high, high."
Yes.
All right. Do not speak high, high. And the repetition in Hebrew is just to say very, right? Very proudly. Very high means very proudly, haughtily.
But it's also very distinctive in Hebrew. It's
is
not
distinctive.
common. It's not like the common way. So it's obviously putting a stress here on high.
Yes.
On
Or
height.
another word could be, yes, high or height or tall.
Right.
And then it's odd when you come across this adjective only twice or three times more in the whole book. And it's curious to find who is described as tall.
And another thing about this is that the Hebrew Bible doesn't tend to describe people's physical appearances in a general way anyway. You hear about different people, but generally you don't hear what they look like. But in these two cases, you do.
So the first person who is described as tall, we turn to 1 Samuel chapter 9, and we read in the very second verse excuse me, Saul is being described. There is a man of Benjamin whose name was Kish, and he had a son. And he had a choice and handsome son whose name was Saul. There was not a more handsome person than he among the children of Israel. From his shoulders upward, he was taller than any of the people. All right? The guy is described.
Isn't it?
That's such a great description, being tall and handsome.
And the people wanted a king. It's as if God says, okay, I'm going to give you the king, one who is like taller than everybody else.
The kind of king you hope would be a
Exactly.
great king.
And that actually appears in his public crowning, right? In chapter 10, where he goes and hides when he's publicly then anointed.
So that the lot falls on him and falls on his tribe, on his house, on his family, and then his name is taken out. And so the people ran and brought him from there because he was hiding. And when he stood among the people, again, the author tells us he was taller than any of the people from his shoulders upwards.
This is in chapter 10, right? Chapter
Yes,
10.
and now notice the verb here that comes afterwards. It's hard to catch it in the English. Samuel speaks up and says to all the people, "Do you all see him whom the Lord has chosen? And there's no one like him among the people." And this call asking, do you all see him?
Right. It's like he's saying, so here's the connection between the motif of size and the motif of seeing. And it's Samuel is saying, here's the king.
So on the one hand, I mean, what's there not to like about Saul? God provides an excellent candidate, and his career starts out great, but we know how it ends. He fears men more than he fears God. But look at the next person whose height is described. I'm sure you can guess him as well. If we turn to chapter 17, verse 4. And a champion went out from the camp of the Philistines named Goliath from Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. Now that is terribly tall.
Right.
So his height is there. Many more things are described about him that are worth another episode. But how do we bring this? How do we start wrapping this up? I mean, Saul is tall and handsome, and he looks like the right guy, but he's not. And even Samuel falls and says, "Did you see what the Lord has chosen? Look at his height."
But this happens with Goliath as well, because in the continuation of that story, the men of Israel, this is in chapter 17, verse 25, they say, the men of Israel said, have you seen this man who is coming up? Again, the emphasis on seeing, and it's exactly this in Hebrew, it's exactly the same wording as what Samuel says to the people.
So with Saul, they ask it with hope. This is a good king to have. With Goliath, they ask it with dread. Who can face such a man?
What they see, the size,
And what they do is they keep looking to the size of people, to their outward and physical strength. There's a key verse that could really wrap all of this up. Let's go there. Chapter 16 describes to us when God had already finished, as far as he's concerned, with Saul. He has sent Samuel to anoint someone else to take his place. And that is David. So he sends him to the house of Jesse. And Samuel goes there expecting that the eldest son will be the right one.
And by the way, in verse 11 of chapter 16, it's translated here, when Samuel says, are these all your children? He says, there remains yet the youngest. Well, in Hebrew, that's the smallest, with the emphasis on small, which is really interesting. But now, coming back to the point you're making.
Verse 7 of chapter 16, but the Lord said to Samuel, do not look at his appearance or at his physical stature, because I have refused him. He's talking about the eldest. For the Lord does not see as man sees, for man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart.
Right.
And this is really the key verse for this whole theme, this whole motif that runs through the length and width of the book of Samuel, especially 1 Samuel. We people often see, and this is a much broader theme throughout the whole Bible, we see the outward appearance and we judge accordingly, but we judge wrong very often. And God does not look at the outward, he looks in. And he calls Samuel to do the same. And through Samuel, the reader too, and this applies all the way to us reading in the 21st century, to look beyond outward appearances. The irony that is brought out by not only the youngest and the least and physically the smallest of the brothers, David, is an irony that God pulls off many times to simply break this trust we have in our eyes.
Right. And I think that it works two ways, if we can just finish on this, that it works both as a warning, not to look in that way at people and the dangers and the things that we're coming across, but it also works as an encouragement that he lifts up those who are down, the low. He, as it says in Hannah's prayer, he lifts up those who, like David, sought him in their heart. And that's what we would just want to leave our listeners with.
Yohanan, thank you so much. This is all for another podcast of the Tsur Institute of Biblical Research.